Hello and welcome everyone. So today is the day for our new webinar about securing modern industry and manufacturing. My name is Sasha Farbach and I am the cybersecurity evangelist at Fudo Security. I'll be your host today. And I'm also here with an honored colleague, really respected in the industry, Rafael Viosna, pre-sales engineer, also at Fudo Security. So today it's all about the modern industry and how we secure that in manufacturing. So let's go to our agenda today. So we'll be looking at a few key points. So essentially the cybersecurity threat situation for modern industry and what's going on, what you need to know, very much about operational efficiency and control and how global manufacturing is benefiting from a complete overview of privileged access and users. So what are the actual benefits? What does that look like? We'll be covering that today as well. We'll also go into some use cases and case studies on how Fudo PAM actually helps to mitigate threats within the industrial environment. A lot of attacks these days and an industry that is vulnerable. So this is our program for today. We'll last about probably 45 to 50 minutes. So we're really glad that you're joining us to watch that today. So let's go ahead and get started with a little bit about Fudo Security. So that name may ring a bell for some of you, for those who have not yet experienced things about Fudo Security. We are the fastest growing, youngest PAM vendor. We have a scale of a very large global partner network. We're looking at over 100 at the moment. It's always growing. It's around the world and well over now 25 countries, pretty much on every continent. We've also seen a fantastic amount of growth in the last 3 years. So year-on-year growth, those figures from 2019 to 2020, about 70%. Recognition as well. I mean, we've received a lot of accolades and also been mentioned in Gartner and Kupping-Cole reports, Magic Quadrant in the past, as well as the Leadership Compass, and some new awards recent in the United States, actually, looking at some cybersecurity awards there as well. Also, we have a large base of customers, and that's why I want to go right across to the next slide here. And you can see the kind of customer base that we have that really extends across the world. And PAM is something that's utilized very much by large enterprises as well as by small and medium businesses. Of course, every industry is vulnerable and every industry has that need to make sure that their privileged access is secure, and that affects banking, finance, healthcare, government institutions, the transportation sector, energy, education, telecommunications, you name it. Any major industry in this world is going to need some form of privileged access management. So there are countless companies here that have used and are using Fudo Security. So here we have some of those, a snapshot. I think you will recognize here some of those brands. So moving now more directly into our reality today. So when we look at manufacturing and industry, I mean, that is still a huge pain point. Also very exciting point as well, because we have so much technology that's been transforming the industry over the last few years and continues to do so, but we still have plenty of weaknesses, plenty of vulnerabilities. Just a small statistic here out of the United States, out of 1,579 breaches, 620 were breaches in manufacturing. So we can see that's a very, very, very big chunk of all the breaches here. And we're looking also at some recent accounts. Not so long ago, Boeing had a breach that affected 36,000 staff files. That was something that was pretty much controlled quickly, but nevertheless, it showed that even a large scale, the number one premier airplane manufacturer in the world can still have these things happen. So it really impacts and affects all kinds of different industries, but in particular, because of all that value of that intellectual property, all of the really valued assets that are contained within manufacturing industry. This is actionable stuff. This is valuable information that hackers, that nation states, that just an internal person might want for themselves for financial gain and leverage. So it's no easy thing to secure this, but this is why we must do all that we can. We're still looking, unfortunately, and globally, at a very long time before any kind of intrusion and breach is detected. On the average, still ranks around 6 months. That's the newest account from ENISA, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. So that's still a very long window where disgruntled employees, where nation state actors, where insiders can move very, very, very laterally into different directions across the network, take access, break things, take things out, exfiltrate valuable data, and we don't want that. So that's still way too long. That's the average here, but still very worrying indeed. Looking also next at other things here, in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at an industry with manufacturing that you are put on a list of five industries globally that are still at most risk of insider threats. Now, the top is still healthcare, without a doubt, but very, very close on that list is manufacturing and industry. Also, we see, unfortunately, a year-on-year rise of those breaches going back the last few years, that it has seen a steady increase. So that's another worrying thing. And that is, of course, because we have, and not, this was before the pandemic, even before COVID-19 and remote work, we have more access, we have lot more access rights. We have a proliferation in general of privileged accounts, access points, different facilities, different contractors. So this just goes in with the explosion of data and data access points that there is now also a rise, because often is the case, things are built for use and they're not, unfortunately, always built for security. Just also a quick mention on an insider breach. I mean, that cost in dollar numbers has also risen. So we're looking again at $10 million in 2020 as the cost of an insider breach. And there's a lot of statistics and a lot of reports that look into this. The IBM has a great report, always teamed up with the Ponemon Institute. We're looking also at the Verizon data breach report. So a lot of big authorities looking into different organizations that still point to a big problem in the sector and some very unhealthy habits. Looking now, where does the need come from? Where can PAM step in to help out? And we're looking very much at the core still, looking at to secure privileged access accounts. Remember, privileged accounts are those where you have root access. We're looking at all the switches, the routers, any kind of ways where you have, so to speak, the keys to the castle. And there's, as I mentioned, there's still too much of a proliferation of that. So we need to make sure that that privileged access is accounted for and that's controlled. We have a very heavy requirement, a plethora of compliance and regulations, least of which is GDPR. We have, of course, now in South Africa, after the grace period of a year, we have PAPIA as well, very similar, mirrors that of GDPR across the European Union. We have certain regional ones, like we're seeing in the United States, the one coming out of California recently in the last few months with Virginia. We have the Brazilian similar case of data protection laws coming out there as well, various industrial regulations as well. So this is a very heavy, like we need, and there's the expectation to provide proper documentation in terms of requirements, regulations. That is no longer an option. Of course, data is expanding, and we have more orders, you have more activity. So we need to ensure that constant, consistent flow of data is secured. You want to know, and you need to know what's going on. We also need to know and understand, and looking at the different users. I mean, you have various users and different data users on a factory floor level, looking at supply chains, at various elements of the organization that have different types of access to different types of things. So we need to make sure that we have a proper guide and a flow to make sure that their access is going to be adequate, that they're getting the most efficient way of getting to what they need to do, and limit exposure as much as possible. At the end of the day, we obviously are looking to improve and to optimize plants and generally all kinds of workflows. We're looking to make the organization, the factory and manufacturing better. We want to operate it more efficiently, want to make it move faster, but we also, we need to know that, security is now a business decision, is a business risk. And we've seen countless examples in the last few months alone, and we go back a few years. So this is no longer an option. We need to have the best sort of things in place to make sure that need is covered. Right. So now moving very briefly into some use cases from our clients that we actually have through Fudo Security. Some will have to remain nameless, but for one, I'd like to just illustrate briefly a client from the Western European sphere. So this is a client in heavy industry, looking at well over 5,000 staff. This is a huge facility that's operational 24/7. This is a facility that requires constant attention, constant care, and that care isn't just because of what's happening in terms of the manufacturing process, but obviously we need to make sure that things are secure, that access is secure. So this is like one of those key benefits that we've received as feedback from that client, is that the oversight of new contractors is just maintained. So the security team is able to understand where contractors coming from, where are they connecting to which servers, what are they doing? So this oversight is absolutely critical, and this is coming straight from them in Western European heavy industry, telling us this is what they like, this is what they needed. That in turn makes all the workflow better. It improves collaboration with staff that are maintaining inside the facilities, and also internally, like I said, with contractors. And this, as you're watching, mirrors very much a typical scenario with industry. So this is straight from them. It improves the oversight. It is streamlined workflow, and it's made everything much better in terms of collaboration. Right. So moving on to the next case, which is from the automotive industry, actually. So this is an anonymous global automotive leader, almost 50,000 staff and employees, global supply chain, constantly operational and busy. And again, they gain from PAM. That is something that they require, they need. Again, their main demand was that they're allowed to maintain and that they're doing it properly, to be prepared, and to allocate resources to gain information, that an audit and IT compliance, everything is ready for that. And again, as I said earlier, GDPR is big on that. It's also about data protection in other countries. This all applies here right now. And again, misuse of credentials and access. All too often, again, there are insiders, people looking for leverage, looking for access. Maybe there's some old accounts. This is the problem with privileged access management, is that you have several privileged accounts which are no longer in use, which are going to be still very much active in terms of what can be done with those. But often is the case with large organizations, it is simply the proper cyber hygiene isn't done. And these credentials maintain their effectiveness. They're available there. We had a case of this not so long ago in the United States, in California, where there was a privileged user on the inside who was actually dismissed, but continued to have access and continued to actually do a lot of damaging things within the company. And I think erased a lot of the scheduling and work programs. So it caused a lot of damage, thousands and thousands of dollars of damage and downtime. Could have done a lot more, but it goes again to show you that there is abuse of privilege, there's abuse and misuse of credentials, and that's what PAM is all about, to mitigate against that. And again, with this automaker, we see, of course, again, they've benefited from an improvement in workflow and efficiency of their contractors, and in the end, a more succinct, a more efficient, and a more lean organization, even if it is spread around the world. Right. So at this point in time, how are organizations and how is manufacturing industry keeping secure? And I know that security will not be a new topic to anyone, but I think we will all come at this with different expectations, a different view of security. So naturally, many of you watching will see that, well, a VPN, that's something standard. Absolutely. No argument there. Something vital, of course, second nature to many contractors and IT staff. Looking also at MFA, multi-factor authentication, also very, very much in use. Great for that entry security, and of course, password vaults to make sure that all the credentials and everything is kept secure. But I will challenge that, and I'll say, even if you have one of these or all three of them, that is still not sufficient. Still not enough. We're looking very much at what's happening in front of the door. We're looking at security, what's happening in front of the door. We're not looking at what's behind the proverbial door, to speak. VPN is not scalable. We're also looking at, if we take Gartner's word as a reputable authority on where the industry is going, with their zero trust resources and zero trust strategy predictions, that VPN will be sourced out. It will disappear quite significantly in the next few years, and the majority of organizations looking to build their zero trust network access infrastructure, that strategy, which encompasses many, many things. But VPN, although very good, is not going to give you all the right protections that you need. MFA again as well. Unfortunately, we had a case fairly recently from the gaming industry, actually, with EA, one of the top game producers in the world. They actually suffered a social engineering attack, provided the MFA credentials to this attacker, was able to then laterally move into the accounts and do a lot of bad stuff, take a lot of data out of there. So again, MFA, unfortunately not sufficient. Password vault as well, great for that initial step in security, but not sufficient into really looking at what's going on, what's really needed. So when we look at what's behind the door, and this is why I want to conjure up this image here, FudoPAM is like a security camera for your privileged session, as if having a camera, a proverbial camera, so to speak, over your shoulders. You see what's going on. Everything is recorded, everything around you, all actions that are taken. It is a CCTV system within your network. That's what it boils down to in a nutshell. And how it works and the actual deployment and how it looks in an infrastructure in your organization, I'm going to pass over now to my colleague, Rafał Wiosna, who will explain to you all the inner workings of FudoPAM.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. Let me show you how Fudo works. And first of all, I will show you how Fudo fits into your infrastructure. So this is the usual way people are working remotely. They use VPN to connect to infrastructure, and they just fire up sessions using remote desktop, SSH, HTTP, or any other protocol that they need to use to gain access to your company's infrastructure. Mostly servers, but sometimes network switches and routers, etc. So this is the standard way, and there's nothing that you can improve here, except maybe for adding a multi-factor authentication. But then again, after the user is connected, there is nothing there to register what user does in this session, except maybe for some server logs or file manipulation statements. But this person might be just accessing data that he or she is not supposed to, or send an email containing documents that are confidential. Or, in the case of external contractors, doing something that they are not contracted to do, like sniffing around the network. So Fudo works in a different way. It sits in between the users and the infrastructure. Users can authenticate with their usual static passwords, but they can also use multi-factor authentication. They can use a different set of credentials that are required to gain access to the infrastructure. And the main difference between the usual way of connecting using a VPN is that Fudo can work also as a gateway using a simple web browser to gain access to those servers and network infrastructure that the users might be connecting to. So users are connecting through either the old way using a VPN or the user access gateway which Fudo provides. They authenticate with Fudo. They have to provide a set of credentials that will authorize the user in the system. And only after the successful authentication, the user will be accessing the servers, and only the servers that this user is supposed to be connecting. Because in Fudo, you can easily specify the list of servers users will be able to connect to. In Fudo, you can quickly create a list of servers user is allowed to connect, thus speeding up the whole PAM deployment process in general. So let's take a look at the right side of this figure. Users are starting their session and connecting to servers either via Fudo or directly. And for this, you have to do some network engineering to send user session to Fudo. Either way, user is required to authenticate with the proper credentials. And after successful authentication, a new session will be started to the company, to one of the servers that user needs access to, and every bit of information going back and forth between the user and the server will be recorded on Fudo and will be stored in an archive, so security officer or an administrator can take a look even when the session is ongoing. This is made possible by Fudo by recording the session and allowing the administrator or security officer to just review the session live or review previous sessions that have been recorded earlier and find out what exactly were the users doing on the servers when they were accessing the infrastructure, with Fudo sitting in between the user and the infrastructure. So notice that there is a complete separation between the users and the infrastructure. There's never a direct connection between the user and the server, so everything is recorded, everything is secured by Fudo, and you can always take a look what is going on right now on the server, who has access to the server, what are the actions of the users, and see if they are legit, or maybe the user is doing something wrong, or maybe it's not the user, it's a hacker just doing reconnaissance session in your infrastructure, so you can easily even terminate the connection when the user or the hacker is connected. And now I will show you 3 use cases that will show how FudoPAM will help you take control of the connections by your contractors or by your employees, or just archive administrative actions in your infrastructure. Now, let's suppose you run a web-based SCADA system. You use it to monitor your manufacturing process, and there is a group of contractors accessing it, tweaking the settings as needed. Their actions need to be monitored, and this is the part you can leverage Fudo's ability to record web sessions live in graphical form. Additionally, our solution can help you organize access rights for your contractors and employees in one easily reachable and manageable place, saving you time and helping you to maintain complete control of your SCADA infrastructure. It even simplifies the whole process, shifting focus from firewall rules and VPN configuration to an easily accessible access control hub, which FudoPAM provides out of the box. Let's take a look at how a contractor can use the SCADA monitoring system with Fudo. I'm navigating to Fudo's user access gateway page, a kind of portal site for the users. Let's put our domain credentials here. Okay, now Fudo asks me for one-time token, which is an extra step that elevates access security. With Fudo, it's easy to add a second factor for user authentication, and it's a good practice to leverage this function. So I'm reaching for my phone to check the 6 digits one-time code Google Authenticator shows me. Google Authenticator. Okay, that's it. I'm connected now, and as you can see, Fudo's administrator gave me a permit to connect to many systems, and SCADA monitoring is one of them, so let's try and connect to it. All I have to do now as a contractor is to click the connect button, and Fudo will automatically log me in. It's a killer feature of Fudo's web recording module. It can send the credentials on behalf of the person connecting to a system. And this person is authenticated without any knowledge of the credentials to this particular site. And since neither login nor password is known to the contractor, there is no way this person can connect to the SCADA system directly. Now let me connect to Fudo GUI to show you what does the administrator see in the live session list. We have one session running, so let's open it and see what is going on. I will try to show you that this session view is live and real time, so I will put the windows side by side so you can see the action live. As you can see, Fudo is recording this session, thus archiving any kind of activity regarding access to this control and monitoring system. And if there's a situation when you want to find who and when change some setting in your SCADA system, you can just search for the name of the device and FudoPAM will find all the sessions that have this device's name shown on the screen. So let's try it. I will type in the name of one of the valves and take a look at a session I'm interested in. This functionality uses Fudo's built-in OCR feature, which will recognize all the words and names shown on the screen and make it searchable in the archive of sessions stored in Fudo. And this is great for compliance or auditing. You can have compelling evidence of your user's activity, not just dry log entries. You can show the auditor or authorities the actual session recording instead of server and device logs. To summarize this section, Fudo's innovative approach to recording web sessions makes it a great tool to monitor and audit all the activity going on in your manufacturing infrastructure, including the actual recordings of the sessions. And if a picture speaks 1,000 words, it's much better to see the recording than to ask people what and when they did. And obviously this is especially important in the case of SCADA and other manufacturing control systems. And if your appliances do not use the encrypted HTTPS channel, in Fudo it's trivial to implement it and secure access to your infrastructure without reconfiguring the actual management applications. As for the second use case, I will show you how FudoPAM can help you create a workflow for the contractors to access your systems for maintenance or configuration and achieve tighter control over the process. Let me present you with the new Fudo 5.0 version, which an early beta I run here. One of the killer new features in Fudo 5.0 is the ability to set up a complete workflow for creating and maintaining access rights dynamically. With this feature, you can give just-in-time access to a system you rely on for daily operations to a person or a company responsible for maintaining it. Sounds simple, right? Well, actually, it's quite complicated to make it easy to use, yet comply with your company's security policy. But you might ask, what is just-in-time access? Well, it's the control that Fudo 5.0 provides the security officer to make the session available to the contractor only when the person is permitted to run it. To run a session, the contractor needs permission from one or more people responsible for granting such access. The configuration is there, but before even the session can be started, someone needs to say, I'm okay with it, or veto the request. For example, if a request is coming in the middle of the night for a remote desktop connection to a database server, this might raise some red flags. And with this kind of workflow, you can even prevent nefarious actions that might strike you at any time from, well, the bad guys. So let's log into the new Fudo 5.0 user access gateway as a contractor. This time I will be using just the usual username and password combo, but as I showed in the previous use case, this can be augmented with the extra one-time password found in an application or even sent to the user via text message. Okay, we've got a list of servers this person is allowed to use, and let me point you to the second one, which is grayed out. This means there's a setup for this connection, but currently it's unavailable. The user needs to ask the administrator for a permission to run a session to this service. So let's create such a request and send it to administrator or administrators responsible for handling it. The user can choose immediate access, like here, for 2 hours, or schedule the sessions in advance. For the sake of simplicity, let's request 2-hour immediate access here. The requestee has to give the reason for this session request so the Fudo administrator or administrators can review it and take the action. Now let's switch to Fudo's administration console and take a look at the new request section. The request is here, and you, as a person responsible for this workflow, may either grant it or reject it. So let's do it, and the administrator has to give an acknowledgement message there as well. All of this is registered and stored in Fudo's database as well as shown in logs, leaving a tangible trace of the request actions taken by both parties. Okay, the request is granted, so let's go back to the user access gateway view and refresh the entry in the row that previously had grayed out item. Great, now we can run the session, so let's use Fudo's built-in remote desktop client to connect to the server. This is yet another fantastic Fudo feature. Most of the work can be done in the browser. Fudo has built-in RDP and SSH protocol clients, so 99% of the time, all you need is Chrome, Firefox, or the new Edge browser to connect and do your work. Certainly, this bolsters the user experience by providing everything the user needs in a single window. Of course, if you need extra functionality such as file transfers or sound, there is still an option to run the connection the usual way with RDP or SSH link. Don't worry, we've got your needs covered. The just-in-time access is new to Fudo. The previous mechanism Fudo had for granting sessions was simple, but it didn't fit well with the zero trust network access paradigm. So in Fudo 5.0, a new, more up-to-date workflow is implemented, which gives the administrators more control over who, when, and what. And paired with the new auto discovery tool that is coming in Fudo 5.0, which glimpse of you can see now on the screen, the onboarding process, including just-in-time workflows, can be automated. I would need to run a 15-minute introduction to the auto discovery feature, so let's leave this topic for another webinar. But let me assure you that just-in-time access and auto discovery elevates Fudo to a whole new level of control. And control is what you would expect from a modern privilege access management system, and Fudo 5.0 indeed delivers it. And the last use case is legacy systems support in Fudo. And let's face it, in manufacturing, there are lots of systems running old Windows XP or even Windows 2000 computers, controlling various machines used daily. While maintaining and managing those computers could get challenging these days, usually there is no tenable way of accessing those systems while keeping them secure. It's 2021, and even exposing those computers on a local network could be a security threat for them. And in case of a security breach, those will be the first targets to go, since it's trivial to get hold of legacy systems control with modern hacking tools. But you can take advantage of FudoPAM support for managing such systems while keeping them out of reach for any kind of malicious activity that might hit your network. The recommended action here is to move those systems to a separate virtual or physical network and use FudoPAM as a gateway to access those old legacy machines. Most of the time, that's all you need to maintain service connectivity with old Windows XP or Windows 2000 base equipment without exposing them in your local network. By giving access only to remote desktop connections, you create a gateway to, quote, old yet essential legacy world without the consequences of local user actions, however legit or malicious those may be. So, as you can see, FudoPAM supports the old remote desktop protocol standard, as well as other legacy protocols such as old SSH variant used by Cisco switches or ancient Linux or FreeBSD machines that might be running the equipment. Dissecting the protocol and maintaining its integrity is an important yet often overlooked part of PAM deployment. By moving these problematic legacy servers to a separate network and putting FudoPAM in charge of screening and recording the connections, you can create a resilient channel for both maintenance and configuration. This minimizes the impact and ramifications of a potential security incident, and that's what matters. A capable PAM system like Fudo can improve your overall security just by deploying it in your infrastructure. That's a huge win for anyone looking for a tangible security improvement. Thank you.
Right, thanks so much for that, Rafael. That was really insightful, and I think you can really see now where PAM can really fit into industry and manufacturing. So just to recap very briefly on our advantages here, and you've seen that today, this unmatched session recording, something that we have pioneered, that we have really thrived in that sector. This is something that other competitors cannot say. You've seen it today. All those different types of, on a protocol level, that can be recorded, RDP, SSH, HTTPS, all kinds of types of protocols that are key to making sure all that raw data is captured. Then also looking at our AI-driven prevention that you've seen here as well, and how that's built into moving a different kind of security. It's far too long where we've been sitting and looking at breaches and analyzing them and being frustrated at what has happened. But now moving with FudoPAM, and the AI-driven prevention technology, really looking at going and preventing misuse before it begins. And then, of course, our one-day deployment, being an all-in-one solution, being agentless, no plugins, no extra things that must be deployed or downloaded over time, where with competitors, it may take several months, or I've heard even stories on some leaders as something even in going into a year or perhaps more, or add-ons that are required. None of that with Fudo PAM. Everything is here. Everything is deployed in one day securely and safely. So with that, I'm also going to open it up now for a few questions. So please, if you have a question, please write it in the chat. We will see, and we'll have it answered in no time. So we're just going to see if anyone has a question now, and if Rafal we'll jump in.
Okay, I see two questions. The first question is, do you support VNC protocol? And the answer is obviously yes. VNC is supported as long as it complies to the open standard. And the servers we support are real VNC and tight VNC. And also connections on Mac platform are also supported. And the second question is, can you use Fudo as an alternative to VPN? Yes, you can. Actually, Fudo supports configuring the user portal access that you've seen in first use case can be published over the internet, and users can access the systems with the web client directly without the need to run the RDP client or SSH client. It's all encrypted, so the encryption level matches the VPN's encryption methods. So it's as secure as VPN, yet easier to use because you basically can give access to your internal infrastructure over the net without this step of logging into the VPN of your company.
Okay, great. So obviously we don't have time for more questions, but thank you so much. And if there are any more concerns, if you have any more particular questions maybe about your industry, maybe a different use case. I mean, there are many more things that we can share here today. Unfortunately, we're limited by time. We'd love to show you more about what Fudo PAM can do. Talk more about the use cases, talk more about the features that Fudo PAM has. So I'll leave you with a note of looking at some of these clients that have trusted us with their data, with their customers, and that we value their trust in us. And we'll see that with us, it's all about making sure that the customer is happy, and you're as secure as you possibly can. So with that, I want to thank you for attending this webinar today from around the world. I know we have many attendees from different locations, and I hope you got a great insight into how Fudo PAM can secure modern manufacturing industry. Thank you so much to my colleague Rafal for guiding us through the tech demo. Thank you for tuning in, and we're always happy to be in touch. Have a great day.